What is up, everyone, and welcome to another issue of Sibling Rival-Read, the comic book club show hosted by yours truly, it's Ben Pie, and my wonderful sibling, where the rivalry is happening.
Anna Dashkin.
Yeah.
Anakin.
Heck yeah. It's manga week this week, and this particular pick was from a friend.
Your friend,
My friend, and a viewer of the show. He had been recommending lots of mangas, and Astro Boy Volume 3 is one that just kept popping up as a recommendation from him. So finally, after, what are we at, like 5 rotations? 6 rotations? Something like
wow.
that? Finally sitting down and reading this book.
Yeah.
We were talking about it a little bit before we started recording, but this one had an interesting opening to it in the forward, because this book was picked up by Dark Horse and essentially republished.
Right.
And they went through a lot of notes about republishing it and how they didn't want to really change anything that Osamu Tezuka did with Astro Boy. So they mentioned, like, there are some things that are maybe depicted as far as the Arab and black races.
Could be construed as culturally
insensitive.
Yes.
So keep that in mind while we're going through this, but
I did appreciate their
candor on that.
Yeah. Their understanding of the times now and wanting to respect artistic integrity of the then.
Exactly. I think that is a huge thing. The fact that they were like, we are against, like, discrimination and all of that, but we think it would be an injustice to Osamu Tezuka to change it.
Especially as they feel that it was never his intention.
Right. And it doesn't
doesn't read as offensive.
It doesn't.
There's no, like, slander from my perspective. I could very well
It's written, so it would be libel, but I mean, this is coming from two white people.
Is true.
So we are not offended by it, but we are white. So if you are offended by it, know that the publisher or the republishing of it, that's why they didn't want to change anything. I was actually really confused at the beginning of this at the beginning of the book, because it has the first page here, and then it goes into this, and it talks about it's the author as a character in the book.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, is this just like an illustrated forward?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And yes, it is. It's just one page. So I'm like, okay, I don't need to read all this. And I start skipping ahead. I'm like, okay, but at some point the story starts. So yeah, here is where we got. Here's where I got, and I was very confused.
I mean, I was really confused that you didn't read it like a manga.
Right, because it was republished by a Western publisher. They redid the whole book and made it read like a Western comic book.
Which, at least on the bright side, because of that, it has guided view and comiXology. Mm-hmm. So when I got real confused, I could just hit guided view, and I was like, oh, I see. This is the normal format. Or normal format. Normal is,
Yeah, right. The format that we are most
accustomed
familiar
to.
with. But yeah, like I could see the depiction of the Sultan being culturally insensitive.
Yes.
But the story is essentially like there are these robots that protect the world and their specific countries, and this guy wants to build a robot that can destroy them all and become the king of all robots and essentially rule the world with it.
Wow.
Standard supervillain stuff. Not completely out of the ordinary when it comes to superhero storytelling.
Yep.
Yeah, so they just kind of, I don't know.
I know. I feel like anything that I would say to describe the story, just to tell the story or recap it, would give it in a bad light, but that's not how I mean it. It was a very like Powerpuff Girl format, like television show.
Absolutely.
Like you have a Mojo Jojo like character, and that's
Yeah. And you know the other thing with this is that I think he mentioned in that little forward, this is when he had just started doing the television.
the television show was going on.
I
at
drew
the
the
same
story
time,
when the Astro Boy TV series was at the peak of its popularity.
and he was enjoying it the most.
Yeah. So, you know, it definitely played out like a serial television show, and it's very kiddie.
It's very useful. And
That's a much better term.
I will say though, in here, and when he was talking about how he received a lot of letters of protest for the robot's death, I was expecting to equally be upset about this robot's death.
I actually was upset about Pluto's death.
I was not. And I was not because he has this redeeming characteristic of like caring and being understanding and wanting to be fair. And then you have the last robot that he kills before trying to fight Astro Boy. He kills while, you know, his back is turned to him trying to save a kid. So there, that diminishes every other character feature that they had displayed, contradicting the fair fight.
Also, I gotta know, you know, they're talking about the most powerful robots in the world. Why is a lumberjack robot one of the most powerful robots in the world?
He was so short-lived. We will never know.
It's true.
It's because he looks like a chicken.
Yeah. The lumberjack chicken. And I will say, I think I knew nothing about the story of
booty phasers.
Yeah, well, also he's getting like gas up his butt.
That's true too.
Like literally the whole scene is like they're
fueling Astro Boy.
Emphasis on Astro. Sorry, I had to do it. I couldn't resist. Anyways, I thought this was a good. Like, I know nothing, absolutely nothing about Astro Boy. I never watched the show, never saw the movie.
I knew it was a movie.
I knew it was a movie, and I've seen the character on things before.
Yeah, he kind of reminded me of very like Popeye era.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hero.
And I thought it was I thought the book was a pretty decent representation, or like, I mean, I have nothing to compare it to. I thought it was a good introduction for me to the character.
Yeah, I mean, the book on its own stood as a starting point because it was an independent story. There was a beginning,
middle, and end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like I don't think that this was a bad one to do a volume, like a non-volume one of. Yeah. I think some of the other books that we've done, like especially like Witch Hat, we definitely needed to do volume one.
Yes.
But I think this is a good precedent for us in saying that, okay, maybe we can actually try to look up and find
better
specific story arcs. Yeah. Like I imagine in Fairy Tale, we probably could have found
multiple points to start out.
Yeah. And you know, it have been fine. Decent and fine. Yeah.
I think this one only left me with like one question that was probably answered in the previous manga volumes.
What's that?
The doctor that kind of looked like a rooster with his beard and the hair.
Okay.
How he comes back and says, "I'm not part of this world," or "I turned my back on the world," and he goes, and you're like, "What?"
Oh yeah,
that was I was one and only moment in this volume that I actually felt like it was not a volume one, and that was a like maybe three panels on a single page.
Yeah. And I do think the book itself, like, it had those kinds of like children's cartoon messages.
Yes.
Like, you don't need to change who you are to be, the best version of yourself.
Yeah. Strength, it does not beat brains
Right.
or smarts or whatever you want.
And there are there's lots of things about being just and
Fair.
then and then immediately turning around and murdering someone in front of a small child.
Not even just in front of one, while,
While
he was holding one.
yeah. And I thought I did not like his sister at all. She drove me insane.
She
Like,
did drive
come
me
on.
insane.
But the world is
He
interesting.
was the shallow character.
Yeah.
Which was kind of funny. And like a unexpected way that the hero's sibling that apparently looks up to them is like the one that belittles them the most.
Right.
And you're like, wow, okay.
Why are you being so mean? And she looks just like Astro Boy. Except
her
she wears
little
a dress.
hair pointies are different.
Her little hair pointies are curvy.
Which I'm also pretty sure that they have a brother. Because I'm almost positive that I have seen 3 little robot children
That look all the same?
that all look the same.
Okay.
And their pointies are all different.
I see.
Yes.
I believe you.
Okay.
And I do, something that I did find super interesting about the world is how every country, they had their like specific super strong robot that were very specific to like their country. Like Switzerland, the lumberjack robot wasn't really a lumberjack robot. He was a mountain guide.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Country in the middle of the Alps, definitely need mountain guide. And then was it Germany just had one that had a bunch of guns and was like a detective.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of.
Came to avenge his like butler cockroach robot friend.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine Astro Boy, like, you don't really see what he does for Japan that much.
Right.
So I can't speak for it, but based on like how he has all of these different powers and abilities, it almost seems like he's a kaiju killer kind of robot. It would be my guess. I know nothing about Astro Boy other than what I have read in this book. So I could be way, way off base.
Which I guess if you were to also approach this as a outlook on like what you took away from Astro Boy as a character, this one didn't showcase his character.
It didn't. It showcased the world a lot, and
then this one villain that then dies.
Right.
So, I mean, I feel like they also showcase the sister quite a bit in terms
They
of
do.
character.
Like, yeah, you
More
get
than
a very good idea of what
she's about.
Yeah.
Urin?
Yeah. Uran? Urine? Not urine.
No, not urine.
Definitely not urine. Okay, let's move on.
Good job, Ben.
Yep. And I did think that like Pluto's design was kind of funny. Like, not funny, but like kind of cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I enjoyed, I don't want to say bubble effect because I know that he's made out of metal, but you know how like the SpongeBob like bubble buddy is drawn with all the rounded edges and the heavy contrast shading?
Yeah.
Kind of like bubble shading, and it definitely spoke to the Sunday newspaper comic child-like lure to it.
Mm-hmm. Lure.
I can't say that word.
Lure. And I think what you're actually trying to say is allure.
Oh. Off. I swallowed that word.
I really don't have a whole lot to say about this book, and I like, other than like we've mentioned it, we mentioned it kind of off camera. Some is I feel like this book has a specific niche, and I'm just not in that.
I feel, and I do see where you're coming from with this. I feel like this is not just a very specific niche, but like
It's kind of like
your
a
very
cult classic kind of
first
thing.
ever manga, or like your very first ever comic. So anybody who reads this and this is their introduction, they're gonna love it so much more
Uh-huh. Yeah.
than somebody who has like grew up reading other things, because this is much more youthfully inclined. So
Yeah.
it's like,
I think you described it really well in that going through and reading it reads like a Sunday newspaper
comic.
Like
Especially with the breaks and everything in the story, you could totally take those weekly
Absolutely.
breaks in there. But yeah. So I feel like I don't have a lot to say about it, just because it was a very straightforward storyline. I will say that in terms of like the fight sequences, there were 7 robots. There were 7, 8, there was 10 or 11 fight scenes,
uh-huh.
because they fought Astro Boy 3 or 4 times.
Right.
And they were all different. So I mean, they were such different robots that you at least got to see those different fights. There was one extra because of that big Marshmallow Man one.
Yep. Baru. Something like that. I'm gonna be really butchering names here.
I did also see...
He looked like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
He did, just made out of metal or tin.
Yeah.
Or like if you cartoon...
Or the Michelin Man.
If you made that first Iron Man suit in the movie...
Oh, yeah,
as,
yeah.
like, a little chibi cartoon.
Uh-huh.
That's what it looked like, too. I will say that, like, the major plot twist in this was expected for me.
Oh, yeah. Where the person who built Pluto built,
Baru is also a robot.
Yeah.
So that's, again, one of those things where there are those moments where you're probably like, oh man, this would be so fun to read because it has such a big twist type of a thing. It would have a big twist for like a kid or like somebody who's not used to reading something like this.
Uh-huh. Oh, but
I did enjoy the character, like the robot designs. They were fun.
Yeah, and I liked how each one did something very specific and different. It's not like all of them are built to fight and...
Not all of them were superior. I did really, really like...
Epsilon,
and he's just like a nanny.
Yeah.
He was like a babysitter in an elementary school or whatever. Or daycare. It was a daycare.
Because every daycare needs a robot with over 100,000 horsepower.
Yes.
I also like that that's how how everything's measured in this world, is it's horsepower. I need 1 million horsepower.
He has 2 million. That's another thing that was very almost juvenile about it all. Was like, I need 1 million. And then the one up is, I've got 2 million.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay.
It's like, oh no, Astro Boy, you're in trouble now. Oh man.
And something about the artwork for it is also with the very heavy contrast of like, it is very stark black and white. There's very little in terms of visual grays. With texture and all of those things. It doesn't really happen frequently.
No, I don't think there's really any gray. It's just texture. Yeah.
Yeah. And even the textures that happen aren't meant to allude to shading.
Right. I also, the book did weird thing, and I'm sure there's an explanation that I did not care enough to look up.
Well, they look digitally rendered in some, like re-rendered, and then the others just look like a page scan.
Right.
Which the first time that happened, that was going to be my favorite page. And then I continued reading, and I was like, oh, that wasn't done on purpose.
Yeah.
I was like, never mind. But then I don't really know what my favorite page would be. Because I just... I'm trying, like, it doesn't... I don't want to say it lacks detail, because how it's drawn, it's not meant to have really small, finite details.
Right. Like, there's nothing about this book that makes me feel like
like Powerpuff Girls has all of those like really soft curves and everything like that, and it's very forward.
Yeah, there's nothing like you don't read this book for the art, you read it for Astro Boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the author also was like, I'm not doing this, necessarily to do a bunch of art. I'm doing this to
See, that
tell a fun
doctor
story.
kind of looks like a rooster. His beard
Yeah,
goes down
you're right,
like a
he
little
does.
rooster gullet.
He does.
Dr. Temna?
Temna? Yeah, so something like that. Temna.
Something like, yeah.
Temna. And
Astro Boy like glows white when he's
Yep.
got them. Did he end with the story with 1,000,000 horsepower?
I think so.
Okay.
But it sounded like the Dr. Tenma was going to make it like a temporary thing.
I got no idea.
But yeah, I don't either.
I did also appreciate in the fight sequences and in the movement when you get the strength of these characters going through the water with the heavy contrast of the bubbles and the water. So like the bubbles have that white outline, but the water itself is solid black. And the characters have the halo of white because they would be frothing with bubbles as they project down. Same when they're going through metal or going through the earth. All of those things were done well. Like you would well in terms of it read easily.
Mm-hmm.
The action read easily.
I thought this whole scene was really cute, and it
was adorable.
I hate that
character wasn't gonna die.
Same. Like, come on, this is.
But this entire thing did not make sense to me for the character of Pluto. The scene where he fights Epsilon, because he saves him from drowning and says, "I owe you one." And the last time we saw that happen was with Astro Boy, and he let Astro Boy go and said, "We are even." And he just ends up saying, "Oh, I owe you one, Epsilon." And so I thought that he was going to let Epsilon, like, save the kid and then kill him. But there is absolutely no redeeming occurrence in that fight at all. So, I mean, once that happened, I was like, okay, I have no idea why people are like, "Oh, I'm so sad that he died." Because obviously, you know what? That was a shit moment.
Yeah. And like the hand's still on the kid.
Yeah,
like, oh
and he
my
shows
God.
no remorse for the child. Like, it was very uncharacteristic of this.
Of the rest that they did with this villain.
Yeah.
I agree.
And so, I mean, once this happened, for me, that turning point was over. Like, I was like, okay, you just made him a completely, like, yeah, he can die, I don't care. Or, like, die. I mean, he's good. He can blow up. He blew up.
Yeah, this whole thing just breaks my heart.
Oh, poor daddy. But yeah, so that, I think that entire fight scene made the overall volume for me not completely make sense. Also, one of the things that I was really upset about continuity-wise, if you're trying to have this redeeming quality about this robot character of Pluto, where did her stickers go?
Oh, true. I didn't even think. Well, you can see.
Where, Ben? They were all over his chest, and they
right.
were little shield shapes. They're not there.
You're right.
And I was like, even if he had those little stickers and like he did all of that stuff to Epsilon and he came out of it and he remembers the stickers type of a thing, I'd be like, aw, he's like a little cute reformed Iron Giant man.
Yeah.
And that did not happen.
No,
I
definitely
not have those stickers.
Right, and I did get like some Iron Giant vibes from him, which fantastic film, by the way.
Great film. Also in the Ted
Lasso
show.
Yes, it is.
It made the footballers cry.
It did.
As it should have.
It makes me cry at that point too. It's like, oh.
Yeah, but we're wimps.
Yeah, that's true. And then, like, even this fight, it's like they try to redeem him by having him help Astro Boy stop the volcano from exploding.
Which is also kind of like an underwhelming redemption.
Yeah.
With everything else that had happened previously, it was like, oh yay, you can help with rocks.
Yeah.
Which I don't mean to make it like, I don't mean to make it sound demeaning. Because I don't think the audience that this was originally marketed towards.
It was us.
Yeah, it was us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So.
And again, like the time period, this was written in what, the 60s?
Yeah.
I think. So it's like the time period, this was probably like a much more like what people wanted to read.
The best fight scene in this entire thing was Astro Boy's first real fight with him when he killed the horn.
Yeah.
Because that was the one that like actually showcased that you don't need strength, you just need smarts.
Right.
And that wasn't showcased again. This was the entire message of brains over brawn, and you only actually see it in action once. And then the character decides, I'm not smart enough, I need more brawn.
Which is so odd.
It was an extremely odd order.
Yeah.
Like story developing wise, it was a very weird order to me.
Mm-hmm.
With how the fights progressed, how the villain progressed or developed, and then fell.
Uh-huh.
It happened in an order that I felt was cut and pasted instead of actually
Do you have a favorite panel?
developing. Actually, okay. I do have a single panel that I read, like a single independent one.
Okay.
Page 137.
Okay. I'm going to preface, I'm just going to throw out there, I did not have a favorite panel. You said 137?
Yeah, it is a single moment, and it happens when the Sultan is yelling at the professor, or the doctor, the creator of Astro Boy, and the creator of Astro Boy's body hits the frame, and his leggies go out of the frame. Like, the frame is the wall.
Oh.
I enjoyed that comedic implementation of, like, just the page layout.
Yep.
That, yeah.
I got nothing.
I thought about it.
I liked the same fight that you liked. There were definitely like those moments where it's like, oh, why is this happening? With Epsilon and, the
only character I felt like emotionally attached to dies.
Yep. Exactly.
And it is not the villain where I am expected to be compassionate towards based on the author's forward on saying, I got so many like letters of I can't believe you killed him. And I was like, I can.
I can. I know we're like
super short, and I feel like we probably went really long on our last one.
Actually, we did it like a normal length on our last one, but I don't have much to say.
And I always feel that it's so bad that we always end up going short on our manga, because it's not that the mangas aren't good. I mean, this one in particular, it's just there's not a lot to say, because art-wise, it was very
cut and dry.
Yeah. Storyline-wise, same.
Mm-hmm.
It was very simplistic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's not much to delve into.
Yeah, there's exactly.
There's not a lot of depth to it.
Right, and a lot of the books that we've done, well, I mean, with the exception of like Fairy Tale, a lot of the books that we've done in general, there's been depth that we've been able to pick out. Mm-hmm. Because we struggled with Umbrella Academy too.
Okay, Umbrella Academy. Sarah should have been there for that one.
Yeah. But yeah, like I agree. There's not like there's nothing that's like, whoa, other than like the message of you don't have to change. You know, wit
which
beyond
they kind of got rid of halfway through.
Wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure, kind of thing.
Yeah, which again they dropped.
Yep.
They dropped that.
The wit was get stronger, bruh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not upset that we read this as a book. I'm glad that we did. I'm probably going to have a decently long conversation with Zanza about what he believes makes this book so good. Because it's just not there for me. He compared it to X-Men too, which I was kind of like,
I'm offended.
Like I can see where he's coming from as far as like the different robots having different kinds of powers and things like that, but I didn't get any other X-Men vibes from this.
That's a stretch.
A little bit of a stretch for me, and I mean,
again, I don't mean to diss the book. It's just not my thing.
right?
And I do also think that it probably has a large cult following based on it probably being some of their first exposures to manga.
Yeah, I mean,
or the thing that got them into manga. If it's not their first one, it was the one that got you started.
Well, and it's like we encountered that when we did Spider-Man Coming Home, our first issue of Rival-Read. It's like that's that for me, because that book will always hold that special place in my heart. And maybe that's what this is for Zanza, and for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I'm sorry.
Why are you sorry?
I'm sorry. I'm more so sorry to Zanza, not sorry to you. I mean, Yeah,
I understand what you're saying.
Because again, I'm glad that we read it. Especially, I'm glad that we took into account a recommendation.
Yeah.
Which we haven't gotten a lot of them, so I'm glad that, one of the ones that we did get.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the little
like, after story.
Little after story
Lifeless
seriously was
insurance.
like a little episode.
Yeah. Like a little mini episode, like a short.
Or just, again, like a Powerpuff Girl episode, which is split in two
true.
episodes in
one.
But,
that's true.
And
that's true.
those shows were only 25 minutes long.
Yeah, you're right.
I know.
I guess I'm just gonna go in and start rating the story.
Okay. We don't want to waste your time by just rambling and trying to come up with stuff.
Like, again, like the story itself seemed kind of basic, and it wasn't even like my favorite kind of telling of this story. I think I'm gonna go pretty low on this.
I know this is probably gonna be one of my lowest ones, and I feel so bad.
I think I'm giving it a 4.
Yeah. Okay. For me, I wanted to give it a little bit higher. I'm saying wanted, not
right.
Going into it, realizing that it was much more childlike or Sunday comic episodic. So with that knowledge, I was trying to keep going with a grain of salt. However, with the morals of the story changing, the character, like the villain, his character flipping, and how I just felt everything was kind of out of sequence, I would give it like probably a 3, because I don't know who I would recommend it to, just because even for like a first taste, even just for a first taste of a manga, I don't feel like I would recommend it to a kid, because they go back on the moral of the story, which I think could have been well received, of the brain over brawn, but then it ends up not being that. And then even going a little older, the story sequence doesn't make sense to me, and then older than that is where we're at, and that's not my audience. That wouldn't be what I would think that
like
this
the target
is the
audience. Yeah.
So that's why I would score that low. Which I'm so sorry. The world who likes this book that I'm like.
It's just not for us, I think.
Which I don't even know what I would say redeeming qualities, but qualities that would set it up as a 3 instead of a 2. I have no idea. It was, yeah. Yeah. He has a solitaire tongue. Spade tongue.
No, I think the redeeming qualities of the story, it was fun. It was interesting. The world is neat.
It's a look at an older time.
Yeah.
In in its storytelling.
Yep. And like that's where I give it like that 4. It's like it's not so bad that I had to force myself to read every single panel, but it wasn't like, oh man, I'm gonna pick up more Astro Boy. It's not even making me interested to watch the show or the movie. Yeah.
Art is me.
Yep.
So art-wise, very cut and dry.
Yeah.
What you would expect. It was done well for what it is. Not much to say about it. And I don't want to also judge it based on the scanning errors that I think happened.
Yeah,
that's not going to be something that we take into account in
No.
this, because that's not the original format.
Right.
So it also kind of reminds me of not just old Popeye, but old Mickey Mouse.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. And like I enjoyed.
So
Like
I would give it like a C. So 7.
a 7? All right.
Maybe a 6.
What do you want?
I'll give it a 7.
All right.
Because, I mean, for a kid's cartoon,
Uh-huh.
I think it's well done.
Mhm.
For an older comic in that era, it's well done. It's nothing groundbreaking. I would give it a passing score. So, and I don't think it deserves a D.
Right.
So I would give it a C.
So where you get
7.
Popeye's vibes, I get Jetsons vibes.
I got Jetson vibes from Low. Not in art style, but in like the futuristic world. And like a little bit of the fashion sense. I go, oh.
Well, and that's kind of
Like
how I
Janet
felt.
Jetson.
This was like the world it's obviously a future setting.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very much a future setting in the I'm just adding really high technology to the world today at the time this was written.
Yeah.
And like that kind of blast from the past like way of envisioning the future, and again the art style of like classic Mickey Mouse, or any of those black and white cartoons.
And the childlike emotes are fun.
Yeah. So I'm kind of with you. I give the artwork a lot closer to it. I think I don't know what I would say about it to give it a lower score than what you gave it. So I think a 7 is reasonable. I don't think the art carried the book.
No, and I mean
me.
the art didn't grip me enough. Like I could have just quickly skimmed through the word bubbles and been completely fine. I wasn't super inclined to digest each panel individually, like I am with some other books that we have read in the past. So, I mean, even in that regard, I guess you could have probably gone down to a 6, but I think with the style that it was intended to be in, it is good.
Yeah.
And I don't feel, and if I did feel it at one point or another, it didn't happen enough for me to remember it, confused by anything that was happening based on the illustration.
Agreed.
There was one moment, but it was verbally explained what happened. So I was like, oh, okay, we're good. Like when Astro Boy crushed the chair because he was so strong.
He was so strong.
He stood on the chair and it went crump, crump, crump.
Yep.
Your pick, so your overall first.
Yeah, I mean, I think my overall, like I said, the art did not carry it in a way that would make me like average the scores out between 4 and 7. So I'll allow the art to pick up my story 1 point and give my overall 5. I mean, I feel like we're beating a dead horse at this point. It's just it wasn't. It wasn't for me. This was not targeted for me. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, like there are other people who enjoy manga and all of that. But this.
I mean, I feel the same way. I feel like
Astro Boy's just not that guy.
I will say for me, I'll also just let the art carry at 1 point, which puts me at a 4 for overall. I don't feel like my issues with the story can be overcome by the art. the plot holes that I felt were there and the jagged piecing of the timeline for me and how everything developed just really sinks it lower, in my opinion. And I hope that people who have read this for the first time or who have read this before and are listening to this aren't going like, what are you talking about type of a thing.
I would actually love to hear, like, for people who love this, I want to know what we missed. Because obviously, like, Astro Boy is a very loved character.
I also would be curious to know, for people who have read this and loved it, have you reread it recently, and what are your new thoughts compared to your original thoughts?
Yeah, that's
because I've totally had that happen to me, where I've reread a book where I'm like, oh, I love it because I love it, but rereading it, I'm like,
well, that's what happened to me when we did Vox Machina, the part one.
That's right.
It's like I loved it because it was more Critical Role, and then like rereading it for this, I was like, oh my god, this is not good.
I mean, we didn't say it was good.
It was just
wordy.
It was very wordy. Yeah.
That was really.
Yeah, and there's just not a lot of depth to this, and I prefer a little more depth. It was a very shallow book. So,
but again, I wouldn't want Aylin to read this either.
Nope. No, I agree.
When she gets older, so that puts us.
Yep, I got 24 points total for this batch of books, and you got 34 points total.
I think this is probably one of the bigger gaps that we've ever had.
Yeah, I think we had one like fairly large gap between you and me where I was ahead.
In like our very first week or very first one.
Maybe it was either the first month or the second month. It was early. Yeah, I did not do great.
We're so behind in our punishment recordings that we need to bounce on it.
We really do. We'll have to talk about that now that I'm staying home. We'll have to talk about getting that all together and all of that.
Yeah, I won.
You did.
And
next week is my pick.
Yes. Which is your Marvel pick?
Yep, it is. It's Chris Claremont's and Frank Miller's Wolverine, which I'm really excited to read. I know Anna's not a huge Frank Miller art fan, but I'm hoping that the story and the fact that it's Wolverine will carry me a little bit.
That's okay. Yeah, okay. That's okay. Yeah.
But no, I'm really, really excited to read that one, actually.
It'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Anything X-Men is
yeah,
in my opinion, fun. I mean, I made comic book heels in high school out of X-Men, like newer X-Men comics.
I remember those, yeah.
Yeah, and I went to competition and like a bunch of people were like, oh my god, I love it. And then they asked me what character it was and I told them it was X-Men and that immediately turned them off and they walked away. And I was like, oh, well, X-Men are great.
X-Men hold a very special place in our hearts because of the 90s animated series and X-Men Evolution and...
Yeah, but I was so thrown. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. Well, so that's what we'll be reading next week. Anna, where can they find you on the internet?
I am on the Instagram. I have 2 accounts. I have a personal account, Anna_Riddick. I have an art account, Anna Riddick_designs. And then we have our Sibling Rival-Read Instagram.
It's not Anna Riddick_designs. It's A Riddick_designs. Just to throw that out there. Her art Instagram.
I talked fast. And our Sibling Rival-Read, which is just Sibling Rival-Read, is on Instagram. Go ahead, Ben. Be all proper about what your actual usernames are. Go ahead.
You guys can find me pretty much everywhere on the internet at itbenpai, ITSBENPAI. That's on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, the whole 9 yards when it comes to social media.
What a show off, and yet it's all just one name. You gotta get right.
Yeah.
And you spelled it too.
I did.
Go ahead.
Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're not watching this on YouTube and you're watching on a podcasting service, stop by the YouTube because we have the book open on the video so that you can see the panels that we're talking about.
We tried to explain some of them.
We do. And then essentially everything else Sibling Rival-Read related, you can find at itsbenpie.com/comic book club. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Until next week, make sure to keep those poll lists full. Send us some recommendations for comics because I would like an easier time picking some of my comics.
Until next time.
Shalom-Aste. Ooh.